war for the Reach is over. The Marchers have retaken their world, and the Petrovich flag flies over the capital again. It's somehow fitting. Of all of us, they were the only ones that chose to live here. They'll survive. They always do. Ezekiah and the other disciples disappeared in the aftermath of the battle underground. No one is fooling themselves into thinking they're really gone, just plotting and biding their time. Sealed off from their Aeon masters, Empyrean sabers stalk the borderlands like animals. They'll never really be gone from the Reach, but then again, they never really were to begin with. We negotiated a ceasefire with the Marchers after a bloody fight in the port. The lawgiver was allowed to leave in peace, with myself and our remaining forces, but not before our gracious hosts left an explosive payload in the cargo hold. We will return to Bastion, scarred and limping, but alive. When we get there, the Justicars will decide my fate. I bartered with the enemy and surrendered the garrison. Not that there's much precedent for doing so in the face of alien invasion. I can hope they sentence me to a quiet post deep in Alliance territory. I've had enough of the Reach and its secrets. As for Avarice, I can't find it in myself to wish him well, but whatever alien world he found on the other side of that gate, I feel a small ounce of pity for it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to War Budgies, and welcome to the last video for Jericho Reach Season 2. The thing you've just seen is the final cinematic, so that is the end of the story for now. Not the end of Jericho Reach, which we'll talk about here. But a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, I put out a request for questions from you guys, of stuff you want to know about Jericho Reach, about War Budgies, about kind of whatever. So I thought I'd take a minute, because I enjoyed these kind of interaction videos, and just kind of run through the questions. So there's quite a few, which is awesome. And it's gonna be kind of a rambling video. No apologies, here we go. We're gonna start off with some of the questions from the Warcaster Discord, because you guys have been awesome this entire time. Not that everybody else isn't, but you know. So first off, what are some of the things to keep in mind when creating a campaign? And there's a few sub-questions here I'm gonna go through real quick before I come back around to answer that. How necessary do you feel extra little campaign-specific rules or models are? Necessary? No. I do think they help a lot, though. If you look at things like the Arc Geyser rules for Jericho Reach, where the ground's exploding outwards, or little custom models like Taria and her eternal scrappiness, or Ezekiah and his little shady nonsense, those are things that they add a lot of flavor to a campaign, and they make it feel different than just some other world or something else. So what I encourage you to do is, if there's a theme or something specific, a specific feel you want your campaign to have, that would be a good time to use unique scenarios, unique models, because they're good for that, they help. What are some of the best ways to spice up a campaign, give it that unique feel? Mostly same answer. Even if it's not balanced, add in some rules or a feel or some terrain or whatever that's unique to your world in your story and what's happening with you. Terrain's actually a really good one, especially if you're in store and you've got like the usual terrain that everybody uses. Like really quietly make your own terrain. Something, if it's an alien world, you know, you can go down to the pet store. I'm looking over here because my terrain shelf is over here. Go down to the pet store, get some like aquarium plants, some brightly colored stuff. Just really throw something eye-popping there so it tells the players you are in something different. That's all optional, but it does help to spice it up. Do you feel like unique scenarios are required in this case? Kind of already answered that. I don't think they're required, but I do think they help a lot, and they're a cool way to just change up. Because you can only play Boiling Point, Chaos Theory for so many times before your brain starts to ooze out. So throwing in stuff like the train scenario, or the split board, fun stuff there. What are your favorite heroes and other models in the game? Well, my favorite hero in the game is Taria, but that's cheating because I wrote her rules. Favorite heroes in the game, Artemis Fang is probably my favorite. Just the combination of a cool set of rules and an amazing looking model. Artemis Fang is there. Harlan Sek is there. I don't know why. His model's cool. His rules are cool. He just has this... he's the only dude who shows up in like a full-on spacesuit. Like he just came prepared for everything. I like Harlan Sek style. As far as generic models, the Grafter is very high on my list of models I enjoy. You really can't top the ISA Firebrand sword and shield that came with the starter set. And I say that because that was the first Warcaster model that I put together. It was for my friend Miranda over at Wargamer Girl. She brought her stuff to Valhalla 2-3 years ago. It's been a while. I think 2 Valhallas ago. She brought her starter set stuff and we were sitting around putting them together, and I put together the ISA Firebrand and sword, shield, and it just beautiful model. Very inspiring. The Aerolith. I'll give an honorable mention to the Empyrean's Aerolith attachment because it looks like this little squishy adorable thing. And it's just devastating. It's like 2 health, blast damage everywhere. The thing's a monster, but it's so little squishy and all that. I sidetrack a lot, don't I? How did you make the Arc Geyser models? I assume you mean... un moment. These. So these are... I'm actually going to be doing a tutorial. I've been meaning to do a tutorial for a while on how to make the Arc Geysers, but there's nothing fancy to it. And the short version is it's just a plywood disc. These are all pieces of pine bark that are angled upwards, and then there's a central support in here that I've melted hot glue around to make it this bubbly mass and all that. And then the swirly bits around it is a bit of weed whacker cord that I cut into strips, and it's got a natural curl to it, so that just wraps up the sides. And the trick to make it look like it's rising, science here, be very careful where you do this, do not do this over your lap, is you put the hot glue on there while it's upside down. So you're sitting here shooting hot glue, and the hot glue will drip in this kind of way, and then when it hardens, you flip it over, and it's got this cool, like, rising look. The problem is you drip a lot of hot glue straight down, so if it's over your lap, that's fire damage. Yeah, I'll try to get a full tutorial on that soon. How do you make a campaign progression neutral? By which I mean no matter the outcome, the campaign can move forward in a sort of predictable or determined way. That is a good question, and I'll tell you, it's tough. And it's easier to do when you're doing something like Jericho Reach than if you're doing something like an in-store campaign. And the best comparison I can give to it is it's like being a DM for an RPG. So you know where the story has to go, and no matter what the players do, the story is going to get there one way or another. So when you're planning out a narrative campaign, you need to know what's going to happen. So with Jericho Reach, I knew how it ended. I knew how I was going to start it, and I knew how it ended. So it was going to start with the Empyreans pouring out of the gate and just wrecking face, and it was going to end with this small team of allied people going down to close off the gate and Avarice escaping to the other side. That was it. Everything else kind of falls in between the middle. No matter what happens on those missions, we're still going to arrive at this end point. When you're doing this with other players, it can be tricky because they have a mental image of where they want the story to go, and someone else has an image of where they want the story to go. Whoever is running the campaign, just be careful what the stakes are for each mission, I suppose would be the moral there. So you can't set up a mission where, what's a good example? It's been a long week. All right, a good example. So let's say in the first mission, so the very first episode of season 2, the Empyreans come rushing out of the gate. Tari and the ISA are doing this like fighting retreat thing. This is how you fight, in case you were curious. You're welcome. They're doing this fighting retreat thing, and the Empyreans win, and they break out and all that. But if I had set that campaign up where it's like, hey, if the ISA win, then they're going to contain the Empyreans, then that's the end of the campaign. You know? So going into that, you already know in advance, no matter who wins, the Empyreans are going to break out. It's just a matter of, do they steamroll the ISA or do they have to do this like fighting, slow, crawling advance? Two different flavors of the same result. They're going to escape because that's what the story requires. So if you're the one running the campaign, you need to know in advance what the story requires and never make that requirement the stakes of the mission. So just a few keystones for season 2. The Empyreans had to break out. Tari and the Lawgiver had to bomb the conduit, or the arc well. That was going to happen. That's about it, mostly. The stuff in the middle was a lot of flavor. The first half of the campaign is just setting up the stakes and making sure everyone has a rotation fighting the Empyreans. And then the second half of the campaign is gathering up the allies and going downstairs. And within those sections, it doesn't really matter who wins or loses. Now, a good way to do stakes, I say good way, my way to do stakes, is like what we did for the AC and Marcher Worlds missions in the second half of the campaign, where so the Marcher Worlds, they lost their mission. So they still got to contribute troops to the end goal, just fewer of them. AC won their mission, so they got to bring a pretty good showing. They brought the Vassal Boss, the Raiders, and the Attachment. It was a pretty good showing, good firepower. And as we saw, having all that corrosion AP really paid off. That was a rambling answer. So how do you make a campaign progression neutral? Because you already know how it's going to end. And you are going to make sure to never put the stakes of the mission on derailing that. Science. What is the thing that came out of Jericho Reach that surprised you the most? That's a good one. And there's a couple of different answers for that for certain values of surprise. I was honestly expecting, and this is not to talk crap about anybody's faction, I was really expecting the Empyreans to steamroll a lot of this campaign. I was expecting them to show up and just wreck face. And we really didn't have that many Empyrean players sitting in reports. There was one week that they won. I think they won the third week, the Borderlands. They won that week. And there was another week they should have won, but the dice roll gave it to, I think, the AC. But I really expected the Empyreans to just storm everybody, and they didn't. That's not a bad thing. Not at all. The whole system with having the factions come in ranked and then having everyone roll dice, that was done specifically to minimize the impact of like if one faction just completely killed everyone else in victories. I didn't want it to be that boring, where it's just a matter of just winning enough battles and you win the sector. This is a dice game, you know? And even players like the poor AC, the first like half of the campaign, they would get like 1 or 2 victories maybe a week. And they had a really good rally around the mid-campaign. But early on, it's like, that sucks. And you never want to feel hopeless. So that's what the whole dice system was. But I was surprised that the Empyreans didn't show up. Outside of the results, a really good surprise was this has opened up some really fun conversations with Privateer Press. And they're just a fun bunch of people to talk to. So that's been a good surprise. Yeah. You can't always, when you're doing YouTube videos about a game, you can't always expect that the parent company is going to reach out and talk to you. Like that's just, you can't go in expecting that kind of stuff. But Privateer has been really, really awesome ever since day one about just talking. Just talking is awesome. Just saying, hey, we know what you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing. Got some shout outs from Primecast and all that. It's been cool. So that's been a surprise. I think actually rolls on into the next question. What are you most proud of about the project? That's an easy one. I am most proud of the number of people who got involved and the number of people who were talking about it. And that's a simultaneously thing I'm most proud of and also thing I'm surprised at. The system with the dice was also built to accommodate if I had a week with 0 battle reports. And that was an honest concern, was, hey, what if we do a week and just no one cares and no one submits anything? And I don't think we ever had a week where there were fewer than 3 battle reports. And I think our highest week we had 7. And that's cool. That's really cool. For the first time I'm trying this out, that is a cool response from the community. So, make sure I'm not messing with my microphone. So having that kind of input from the community, big surprise, very, very proud of that. My favorite part of every episode was that bit in the intro where I'm standing there doing my bit, and I've got all the pictures that people sent in from their battle report showing up. I loved going through those pictures and just seeing models on the table and people rolling dice, people having fun. And that was really cool. And just the way people talk about the campaign now is awesome. Like, Jericho Reach is it's just sort of a thing. It's become part of the collective consciousness for the Warcaster community, and that's awesome. That's not something I did. That's something that you guys did by participating, and I love that. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of how the community interacted with the campaign. Will we get a post-credit scene of 2 coffee mug engineers chatting around the water cooler? I don't actually own any coffee mug engineers, and I need to fix that. Somebody comment below, remind me to buy coffee mug engineers. But in the meantime, stick around to the end of this video and you'll get something. How well do you find the Warcaster rules adapt to a narrative campaign? Pretty well. I've been doing narrative, I guess I've always been doing narrative play. I've been playing wargaming for about 20 years and I've always done it in a narrative style. So the game rules I don't think impact, figure out how to phrase this. The game rules don't really determine, in my opinion, whether or not something is narrative or not. It's how you play the game. So you could play this game in a crunchy competitive sort of way, or you could structure the whole thing around a couple of characters and a fun story. And the setting that the world is in has a lot more to do with that than the game mechanics do. I'm forgetting the name of the game, and I probably shouldn't say it anyways, but there's some games that are very, very limited in scope, like they take place on a sports field. And that's a bit more of a challenging thing to do a narrative campaign on because the setting doesn't really encourage that. And now I want to do a Blood Bowl narrative season. Why do I do these videos? Okay, back on track. Yes, Warcaster, it fits very well. The actual world that they built is really cool, especially now that we're getting more lore into it. And the whole mechanic of having the players, the Warcaster, and sending your troops down and all that, it just fits. It fits really well. That would be, so I find it works well. How did you find the time to be so awesome and talented and handsome? Well, clearly, I didn't. But thank you. To cover what is next for Jericho Reach? I'm actually going to hit this at, no, we'll talk about it now. Why not? No need to keep you guys in suspense. So, what is next for Jericho Reach? There is a season 3. Let's get the facts out of the way. There will be a season 3. Taria is coming back. As you saw in the cinematic, she's going to be at a different kind of post for a while. Whether her career went up or down after the war for the Reach, we're not exactly sure. We'll find out. So there will be season 3. Taria will be back. The Lawgiver survived the event, so the Lawgiver will be back. The bad news is we are probably a year out or so from Jericho Reach season 3, and here's why. We here at War Budgies, I say we, War Budgies essentially, it's me, my bird, who's just kind of the mascot, and my wife, who's very supportive. She actually voiced Taria this season. But this is a one-man show. And we are moving to Alaska in June of next year. So I'm getting out of the military, finishing up 12 years of service, and we're going to move up to Alaska to settle down. And that means everything that I have in the studio is, starting now, very slowly getting packed up. And these seasons take a lot of work. So season 3 is going to be the first project that I do. Once we get moved to Alaska, we buy a house and I get a studio set up. I'm actually going to set up like a nice studio because I'm in front of a green screen right now, but I'm literally sitting in a shed behind my house, and that's the War Budgie studio. So in the future, look forward to a nicer studio and hopefully higher production values. But Jericho Reach will continue. Season 3 is going to happen. I already have a lot of ideas for what's going to happen in season 3. I'm not going to reveal them yet, but I do want to know what you guys want to see in season 3, so drop that in the comments below because I love community interaction. And frankly, Warcaster is a really fun game and a fun community. We got to hang together, even though ISA is the best. So that is our Discord questions. We can move on to Facebook. We had a couple on Facebook. How do you balance the narrative between telling a pre-planned story and allowing for emergent changes? Is the whole season planned before you start it, or does it shape based on results? Talked about that a little bit earlier. It's very much like being the DM for an RPG game, a role-playing game, an RPG, where I'm not going to say this is the right way to do it, but the way that I do it, know where you're starting, know where you're ending, and then just guide the players along the way. And in this context, it's easy because I'm the players. And that's one of the benefits of doing a solo campaign like this, is I don't have to worry about somebody going off script because I am the script. So that's fun. As we finally got going with reporting battles for Season 2 and getting quite stoked at the late stage of the campaign, can you give us some words of encouragement for transferring that enthusiasm for Season 3? Yes, play the game. It's a fun game. That wasn't an answer. No, thank you guys very much. I know there were some people who weren't able to get into the starting bit on the campaign. We had sort of pick up in battle reports towards the end as people kind of got their stuff painted, got out gaming and rolling and all that, which is good fun. The global campaign aspect of it, we are doing again for Season 3. So don't worry about that. You will get to play. We'll get to play in the next campaign. It will not be over Jericho Reach, but Jericho Reach will feature as part of it. We are, spoilers, mind the spoilers. We are expanding the scope of the Jericho Reach story. So Jericho Reach in Season 1, Jericho Reach is a planet that's just kind of come under conflict from all of these 3 different factions, and that's just the theme. It's a battlefield. It's a big spherical battlefield that occasionally explodes. And then in Season 2, we realize that it links back to the Empyrean's network, and they're coming through, so Player 4 has entered the game, and then more chaos ensues, and then they seal that gate shut. In Season 3, we're going to expand because that conflict is now growing to where Jericho Reach is not going to contain all the crap that's going to go down in Season 3. It is Season 3 will be multi-world, we'll put it that way. And that's all I'm giving for now, because I'm in a good mood and I'm going to give out spoilers, and that's not what I'm here for. Some comments from YouTube. What has been your favorite moments of the season? Favorite moment of the season outside of gaming, and this is going to be a little self-indulgent. My favorite moment of the season is episode 5 or 6, the one that takes place on the Lawgiver. In the opening cinematic, Avarice becomes face to face with Astraeus, and we find out that Avarice has been through the gate before, and Astraeus let him go. And Astraeus, he levels his weapon at him, and he tells Avarice, he's like, "You were warned." And Avarice just kind of stares him back and was like, "I'm human, and we do so very poorly with warnings." And this shot from Taria, who's back behind him, because raging over his shoulder. And that was the mental moment that actually structured the whole season. I thought of that interaction and built out the whole story from there. So that one moment, I love how it turned out, getting all the little photos and the models and all that. That's my chef's kiss moment for the whole campaign. Will we see a 15-unit game? This is a really good question, and it is one I get asked a lot. War Budgies, or Jericho Reach, has so far been exclusively skirmish up to modified skirmish, I think in episode 9 of this past season. And that's mostly because models are expensive. What I should do soon, and again, someone hop in the comments and remind me of this, what I should do soon is get all the Warcaster models I have laid out and just do an army showcase. But what you'll realize is I really don't have that many because I'm buying 4 armies at once. So in episode 9, you saw basically the entire Empyrean collection that I have, minus the Zenith, I think. And almost all the ISA I have. I have the most ISA because I'm an ISA player. But yeah, it's just the buying, the building, the painting models is it's something I enjoy, but it makes it very hard to build up at least 2 armies up to 15 units, plus 3 free heroes. So will we see it? Yes, it is something that I do want to do. The other problem with it is these episodes take a long time to film at the skirmish level. And at full battle force, at primary mission scale, it would be even longer. I would need probably at least an extra day. I could probably do it in a day. It depends on what I have going on. I've already talked about the process beforehand, but basically when I'm filming these things, I need 1 day to film and I need a day to edit. And I used to be able to post that same day, but for some reason this season when I upload stuff to Facebook, like I have to wait for it to upload, process, and then it has to process HD so it doesn't look like garbage. And that processing HD has taken hours this year, and I don't know what's going on with that. So yeah, at the skirmish level, basically I need about half a day to set everything up. The terrain, the scenarios, the cars, draw the things, get all the units. I need a day or an evening to film it. And then usually Saturday, I spend a good chunk of Saturday editing it all down, doing everything right, filming the intro, outro, doing the voiceovers and all that. So it's a bit of an ordeal. And extending that to full battle force would need at least an extra day. And at that point, we're talking like 4 or 5 days of work for one episode. There's a lot of work behind these things. So after I get out of the military, when I've got a full-time studio, I will be more amenable to that. But I need time and I need models. Story of my life. If you had guests for next season, who would they be? Not a difficult one. There's some really cool dudes here at the store who play Warcaster. They're really active on the Facebook page, and I'm going to shout them out. Chris Graves, Adrian Brown, Avery Settle, AJ Fields. Really good dudes, like really just fun people. They also taught me a lot about War Machine, since I wasn't really a War Machine player when I moved here. So really cool dudes, wouldn't mind having them on. My friend Miranda from Wargamer Girl, absolutely getting more videos with her. We had one showdown that you can find on the channel. We played at Last Valhalla, so a year ago from October. She's big into War Machine, but I can probably coerce her into doing some Warcaster stuff. My good buddy, Mini Wargamer Dave, I've really been meaning to get up to Canada and actually sit down with him and film some Warcaster stuff, but we haven't been able to do that. Because COVID and because military and because time off is a thing. These are all things I would love to do, again, in the future, after the big move, get settled in, have some honest to God guests on there. One of the reasons, this wasn't your question, but I'm going to make it part of the answer. One of the reasons that I do this channel the way I do is because it's a lot easier to schedule. Because if I need to film half a battle report one evening after work and then crash and then finish filming the next day, that's no problem. I can piecemeal filming together when I need to, because I'm active duty military and we work a lot of hours, and I have a family and I work a lot of hours with them too. And I don't really need like all my time to get sucked up into this. So scheduling is hard, but hopefully will be easier to come. I would love to have guests. It's very tricky to film with guests though. Because when I'm filming, if I like swear on camera, I can just redo that clip and then edit it out. Can't do that when there's another guest. It gets weird. What would you like to see Privateer Press add to the game? Well, that's a fun one. If you guys don't know, we do have, I think it said 2 new armies coming out for Warcaster between now and late next year. One of which is the Lost Legion. We saw some art for that recently on Primecast Plus. Some concept art for the Lost Legion. We really don't know much. They're very much like Axel for Hire, the wildcard figure who I still haven't painted up. So go check that out because that's pretty cool. What would I want them to add? Well, I'm going to stay away from factions because they haven't said what the second faction is, have they? So I don't know. I can't answer the faction one because we don't have any information on the factions as they're coming out. More abstract, it would be fun. Structures maybe, kind of like in War Machine, you can drop like structures and terrain when you're doing stuff. That might be cool. I don't know. It's a really good question. They've been knocking it out of the park pretty well so far, so I'm perfectly happy. Oh, the freaking monsters. I'm excited for that. There was a Primecast a while back. They were showing off a sketch of a monster and the idea that these things might get dropped into games, and that would be fun. That would be madness. If you could create a faction, what would it be? Same answer as above. I don't know yet, because we know there's factions on the way, but we don't know yet what niche they're going to fill. So ask me that question next year, this time. Make a note. Will we remain largely focused on Jericho Reach, or will the Lawgiver make its way to other planets? Much like I mentioned before, the Lawgiver will make its way to other planets. I'm not going to tell you the context of that, but we are still going to involve Jericho Reach. Something I did not want to do. The Marcher Worlds have won the Reach quite handily, and bravo to them. What I didn't want to do is then start Jericho Reach Season 3 and be like, okay, we're fighting over the Reach again. It's like, we just won this thing. Like, it's theirs. Let them hold the trophy for a while. So we are branching out into other worlds, but Jericho Reach is still going to feature in the campaign quite heavily. Otherwise, the name wouldn't make sense. Are there any 11-2, it's a modified skirmish, games coming up? Same answer. The bigger the games, the longer it takes to film. Episode 9 took a while to film. And that was, I think, a modified skirmish, or just, I think that was a 10+1. So talking about 11+2 modified, I don't know. Bigger games are coming, but they are coming in Season 3 after I've moved, after I'm settled in Alaska and I have my studio and all that stuff. Any thoughts on running other people's campaigns? I know a fan posted one in the Warcaster Discord not too long ago, and I have some ideas for one myself. First of all, if you have ideas, write it. No, it's cool. I honestly love fan-made content, because there's a thing that we talk about when we're talking about learning languages, right? When you're learning a foreign language, you know you get the language when you start to make jokes, specifically puns usually. If you can make a joke in a foreign language, that just means you understand the language. You have immersed yourself enough that you understand like wordplay and all that kind of stuff. And it's a stupid little marker, but it's a big milestone when you're learning a new language, when you can start to make puns. And when it comes to fan-made content, that for me is a really exciting thing about a game, because it says that someone's interested enough in the game beyond I'm going to buy it, beyond I'm going to play it, and beyond I'm going to like make some special rules or a story or background and all that. It's all the way up to like I'm going to sit down and make something structured and narrative and gift that to the community. And that's amazing, and I love that. So if you have an idea, write it. You know, you're not getting paid for this, so don't worry about making it super top quality or anything. Just put your ideas on paper, make it cool, make it fun to play, and then throw it out there. As for thoughts on running other people's campaigns, I believe you're referring to Dresh Corral, Joshua Smith made a campaign, The Night of the Black Sky, I want to say. It's about a pirate ship, which is pretty cool. Night of the Black Sky, it's a narrative campaign. It's been posted on Discord and on the Warcaster Facebook page. And there's some custom scenarios in there, some custom rules. I read through it. I don't think I'll be playing through it. I may borrow some of the scenarios and all that, but I don't think so. And mostly that's because, as per the usual question, the previous questions, I do like to have a story arranged already. And I kind of want that to be a surprise. So maybe, maybe not. What is your wish list or speculation on the Lost Legion? My wish list or speculation. There's not much to speculate on right now. We know there's some robot squads. We know there's Axel. We know they look like robots in cloaks apparently look amazing. So take note, Hollywood, robots in cloaks, you got it made. The existence of the Lost Legion, as we've seen them, raises a lot of questions, like what is their Warcaster like? What are they doing? Whose side are they on? Why do they look so cool and make me want to spend all my money? So, hard to say. Would you consider Jericho Reach a good place to start an RPG? Well, yes, I would. It's a magnificent place. No, Jericho Reach is a terrible place to live. Don't ever live there. Yes, I would, and that's not just me being egotistical, although there is that a little bit. The Jericho Reach was designed to be a place where all the factions come together and stuff happens and stuff can happen. So, yeah, I think it would be a good place for an RPG. You could pick someone from most of the factions, not Empyreans, obviously. But as we saw in episode 10, you could have an adventuring party, as it were, that's a Marcher, an ISA Paladin, and the Grafter, be a fun party guy. and a graphic, and they could get along, sort of, whether it's during this crisis or in the aftermath when they're like, hey, we should hang out, you know? Go get some drinks, get blown up by an art geyser. Good stuff. As to my knowledge, there's no Warcaster RPG stuff. I don't know if you could modify something like Starfinder, or even just modify like the Requiem rules. I don't know. That's probably outside the scope of my ability to design stuff. Yeah, weird. Yeah, if you want the Jericho Reach source book for some random RPG, like, subscribe, put in the comments. All right, last few questions came in through email. Some good ones here. More technical ones. About how long does it take for you to put together a video? Kind of alluded to that earlier. Usually what I'm doing is I'm piecing it together. I'm setting up throughout the week in the evenings. Although I guess if we're doing the full scale of things, it goes all the way back to the time you spend writing. You write out your concepts, you write out the structure, here's what I want to do, here are the missions I want to run, here's how the story needs to follow these missions and all that. So there's a lot of writing and prep work involved. And then I come out here to the studio in the evenings after I get off work. I'll come out here, spend a little bit of time, put the mats out, pick my cipher decks, terrain on the board, get the units. Usually leave it there for the night. Next day after work, come out, film like Pulse Round 1. And it takes a couple, I'd say an hour and a half to 2 hours to film a single Pulse Round. Pulse Round 2 is usually the worst one. So in Pulse Round 1, turn 1, usually nothing happens. Everyone just runs up. So that's an easy one. Pulse Round 2 is just madness, because turn 1, 2, and 3, something's chaotic happening the whole time. Pulse Round 3, sometimes by turn 2, you can figure out how it's going to end and just call it there. I know there have been a few comments about the fact that some of my battle reports end kind of early. They end kind of early because you can see where the battle's going, and it's also usually like 9 o'clock at night over here, and I need to go to bed, and I'm tired. So, because the problem is, if I wait till the weekend to actually film the battle report, well, the weekend is when I have to edit and do the effects and the voiceover and post it. So it's a mess. Yeah, I love it. It's a one-man show thing, but it is a lot of work. A lot of work. What do you think are things that don't know about creating a video? They take a lot of work. You don't have to have anything fancy for it. We're currently in sort of a really golden age with battle reports, I think, because there's a lot of channels out there doing all sorts of battle reports, and they look gorgeous. Mini Wargaming, of course. I'm going to call up my buddies over there. Play on Tabletop, beautiful looking battle reports. Wargamer Girl, of course, has her style. Yeah, it's just really cool stuff. But what people forget is you don't need anything really fancy for that. I'm sitting here looking at a camera that I bought for less than $200 on Black Friday like 4 years ago. This is just a little corded mic. And at some point I'll do a studio tour, because my studio is a shed. And there's a slab of MDF, I throw the battle mat on, and that's it. So I think you can get by with a lot lower tech equipment than you think you can. And a lot lower grade software. Just spend time learning how it works and making sure you're not going to hate it. Some of the best advice I got when I started this, when I started War Buddies, I reached out to several of my friends, Miranda and Dave, Uncle Adam. I reached out to Uncle Adam and asked for his advice, and he had amazing advice. He was like, don't buy a camera. He was like, take your phone, film a video just on your phone. Like, just try to film something, edit it, put it together, just try to do whatever, and see if it makes you miserable or not. And if you enjoy it, then go buy something a little nicer and carry on with that. And if you don't, you haven't wasted any money. And that's amazing advice. And obviously it's been years and I'm still making videos, so that worked out pretty well. But I would, yeah, I think there's this illusion that because we can control your perspective as the viewer, we can make everything look good. And it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be anything super high tech and all of that. Like right now, it probably looks fancier for you guys, but I'm sitting in a shed behind my house. The camera is balanced on a box, and I've got just a cheap sheet of green fabric behind me as a green screen. And that's it. And that's the budget I've been running with for years. You don't got to go crazy with it. What inspired you for the series of events for season 2? In other words, how did you come up with the scenarios in the scenario sequence? Good question. I knew how it started because of how season 1 ended. When season 1 ended, we were coming up on the Collision Course Kickstarter, I think. I think Collision Course Kickstarter started during season 1. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, because my brain is full of stuff that doesn't make sense. So we knew the Empyreans were coming, but they weren't here yet. And I was like, well, that's a perfect place to end season 1. So, which means then that season 2 has to pick up with everyone coming through. And by the same token, the way that season 2 ended is because of what I want to do with season 3. So Avarice's story isn't over either. And he's out to cause trouble in the Avarice sort of way. So once you have the beginning and the end, you just have to fill in the middle. And that sounds like really useless advice. But it is. So like if I knew at the start that the Empyreans had to be a serious threat that were pouring through this gate like it was D-Day in Omaha Beach. So they run over the ISA and all that. And then I wanted to showcase how they interact with the other forces. So it pitted them against the Marchers, and I pitted them against the ISA, and we threw a race mode in there just because it was fun. It was a fun race mode, actually. And then at some point, it's like, okay, well, there has to be a turning point, right? So they are the unstoppable army, so how do we stop them? And that's where the whole conversation with Avarice came from, where he's like, you got to think like a human, which Taria accurately interpreted as you got to break stuff you're not supposed to break. So they shot the torpedo down and scared the Empyreans, and that's what led to the engagement on that. And then from there, we move into the final act, as it were. And I knew I wanted Taria to go into the final battle with allies, so that set up 2 of the reports. Actually, episode 9, the big showdown with Baron Morgrave, was the one that took the longest to come up with. Because I had kind of miscounted. I was like, okay, we got this. And then we have an episode between when she's got her allies and the finale. And I'm not going to say it was a filler episode, but it was kind of a filler episode. But I took advantage of that to be like, here's a whole bunch of spooky new units for the Empyreans, and here's Morgrave, and here's like the most models we put on the board at once. And I had a good time with that. Yeah, and that's it. So pick the start, pick the end, figure out how you're going to get there, and then just fill stuff in until you have enough episodes. All right. Looking back, was there any plays or model abilities that you missed that could have made a difference in each scenario? Almost certainly. War games in general, there are a lot of rules to remember. And when you're playing both armies, I mean, essentially I'm playing 4 armies in different combinations. So I know I forget rules all the time. And I try not to. One of the reasons why it takes me so long to film is because I'll decide to do something. I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot this combat engineer, okay? He's Def 2. I know he's Def. I can tell you right now, the cards are right over there. I don't have to look at it. He's Def 2, Armor 4. But I'm going to check anyways. When I'm playing the game, I'm going to stop and I'm going to look, because I don't want to miss things. So you don't want to just like throw Ramshackle Battle Report and be like, oh, it's narrative, whatever. No, I want to get the rules right when I can. But I know I still miss stuff. There's stuff like on the back of the cards, I know I miss, or I'll forget about this, or I'll go out of sequence. I forget to drop the second gate, or I forget to drop a gate a lot, actually. If you watch the clips, typically I'll finish someone's turn, we'll be 2 steps into the next turn, and then I'll be like, crap. And so the clip of me dropping the gate actually takes place halfway through the next turn because I forgot to do it. It's a mess. But that's the kind of thing that would be easier if I had a guest, because then I only have to worry about my set of rules. I know there's stuff, I hope, for the most part, I hope it doesn't change the outcome too much. And yeah, that's about all I can do. I know I'm going to mess up. I know I'm going to forget stuff. You try to minimize where you can, and that's really all you can do. Can't ask for more than that. If season 2 had ended differently, can you share what the outcome would have been? Ooh, I like that. If season 2 had ended differently, I assume you mean the global campaign, because Tari and Avarice, their story was set from the beginning. Excuse me. It's one of the reasons why I separated Tari and Avarice's story from the overall story of the Reach, because you guys settled that. So the ending of the Reach I thought was kind of poetic because it came full circle and returned to Marcher World's control. And that's nifty. That's just a cool way to do things. There were some plans for if it had fallen into other hands. Obviously, if it had gotten overrun with the Empyreans, that would have been interesting. They would have essentially set out to exterminate all the humans on the world and tried to turn it into what it was supposed to be, which is a staging ground for their armies to move through, which would have made season 3 very interesting. The ISA, I'm an ISA player, so I'm gonna hate myself a little bit for saying this. The ISA ending might have been a bit boring because we've already seen them conquer the world. So it would just be the ISA reconquer the world. I think it would have been fun to play around with an idea of the ISA reconquer the world, but they end up having to sort of establish like a joint government with the Petroviches and have to adapt themselves to the Reach instead of trying to bludgeon the Reach into adapting to them. So break the ISA mentality a little bit and be like, okay, this is going to be the weirdest outpost we have. And that could have been a cool thing to explore. The AC, I don't know what the story would have been like if the AC had done it. The AC probably would have just propped up the Petroviches again, but with a knife to the back of their head and just been like, now you're going to play by the rules. And they're like, I don't know what rules you're talking about. And he's like, I don't know either. I'm the AC. I don't know, because the biggest representative for the AC was Avarice, and obviously he went through the gate. So there would have been some interesting possibilities. I haven't put too much brain power into it. It would have been cool regardless of how it ended. I do think having the Marchers retake it was kind of poetic. And on a personal level, I'm really thrilled that the Lawgiver lived. Because when I came up with the idea of letting the players decide, the first few people I asked, like, what would you do in this case? Everybody was like, I would crash the ship into the surface of the world. Like, everybody did that. And at Warfare Weekend, I'm sitting there talking to people, and they're like, yeah, we could just, the Marchers took the capital, we could just bomb the capital. Yeah, so having the Lawgiver escape intact makes me happy and minimal carnage. Go figure. Lastly, what is the big thing that you think people don't know about the narrative about Jericho Reach you wish they did? That's a cool way to end it. Something about Jericho Reach I wish they didn't know. There's some weird random trivia stuff. I'll throw a couple at you. For one thing, in the first, I've had some voice acting help in the first season. My older brother, he voiced the Lawgiver's commander. My younger brother voiced Wells, the Paladin Weaver. In season 2, my wife voices Taria. So there's kind of a nifty thing there. And technically, we both voiced Astreus. If you go back and listen to Astreus' voice when he's talking to Davros, that is my voice and my wife's voice overlaid over each other. Because I don't know what Empyrean Aeon sounds like. The name, actually, Jericho Reach. So going way back to when I first had the idea, for season 1 of Taria chasing this Warcaster, like she's pursuing the Marcher World Warcaster. That's what leads us into season 1. And originally, Jericho Reach was the objective name of the Warcaster. It wasn't the name of the planet at all. He was Objective Jericho Reach. And that's a little holdover from my time in Afghanistan, where when we work on a target, we assign them a code name so that we can talk about them without using their names and all that. So it started off as just the Warcaster was Objective Jericho Reach, and that was the story. And then I thought that's kind of clunky to explain to people, but I'm very attached to the name, so Jericho Reach became the name of the planet instead. And I guess, so the thing I'll leave you with, actually, that I think is cool. So the idea for Jericho Reach originally, it came from the fact that in the early days of Warcaster, we had very little lore to go on. There was the little rule book, which I have laying around here somewhere. The tiny little rule book has like 4 or 5 pages sort of introducing you to the universe, but the Thousand Worlds book wasn't out. We didn't have the post from Jason Souls talking about how the factions work. We had very, very little to go on. And that is an incredibly exciting place to be creatively because you're not limited by anything. Like, you can just go nuts. And I can actually pinpoint, and I'll put up a clip here in a second, the exact moment that I had the idea to do Jericho Reach. And it was during one of the Privateer Press live streams about Warcaster. I want to say it was Marchers versus Empyreans. And I'm going to dig it up and I will put the clip up here right about now.
Which is right, cha. Surprising turn of events.
So literally, as I typed that, I got into my head, I should do a narrative campaign that I can set on a world and just, out of the 1,000 worlds of the Hyper-Uranian, I'm going to take one and I'm going to put a story there. And if it's successful, then it becomes something that people can relate to. Instead of just like, hey, here's the big setting. Well, here's a little setting. Like here's a focal point. So that's really what Jericho Reach was meant to be. It's a focal point where things can happen on a smaller scale than the big movements and shakings of the universe, and that the community as a whole can come to know and understand and hopefully really get attached to this stupid little chunk of exploding rock hurling through space called Jericho Reach. And it's been fun. It's not done yet. So thanks you guys very much. Drop any questions you have below. I'll do another one of these videos at some point, but for the most part, I'll just answer them. I just like to sit down sometimes and talk to the camera because you guys are cool. So keep an eye out. There are more projects coming between now and the big move. I don't know what they are exactly yet, but they are coming. Some of them might even be Warcaster related. I don't know. But put in the comments anything you want to see out of War Buddies between now and June. And if it's feasible, I will try to get to it. Thank you guys very much for watching. Stick around for the post-credit scene. And as always, I will see you next time on War Buddies, Warcaster, Jericho Reach, season whatever. Thanks for watching.
And then a whole bunch of aliens come pouring out, and they all really wanted to kill us, so it was rough.
Wow, that's crazy. Have you tried killing their gods?
What? No! Who does that?
No, I don't mean like it's kind of an idea.
What is wrong with you?
You should probably try killing their gods.
I'm going back to my desk.